Then I would put heavy here, too slow. Mobility is really the limiting factor on heavy. So there's some potential there, but for now, we'll put it here.
Yeah, they're pretty interchangeable. Heavy's just too slow, man. Heavy, too slow. He's also kind of basic. Like, if he wants to put out that damage, he's got to stand still.
Some people think they can outsmart me. Maybe.
Yeah, that seems about right.
This is the Heavy Weapons Guy, a 6'5" Russian mountain of a man. Heavy is a pretty straightforward class. He has a minigun that can do massive single target damage when fully revved. He has a portable health kit that he can use, or if you're a weirdo, you can use the shotgun. And he has some form of a melee, usually involving a fist. He's slow as fuck, but he has the highest health in the game. Now, from first glance, especially because of the way they look, new players often gravitate to classes like Soldier, Heavy, and Scout, classes that look fun, or look like they can do a lot of damage. And that's the problem with Heavy. He might theoretically be able to do a lot of damage, but actually dealing damage ends up feeling like this. So how do we maximize Heavy's effectiveness? It's all about decisions. More specifically, decision making. What do I mean by that? Well, let's look at TF2 as a whole. In any game, you will constantly be making decisions, no matter the class. You have to adapt to what's going on around you, constantly changing between offense and defense, and the most powerful tool in Heavy's arsenal is game sense. Or just experience. Because of how slow Heavy really is, he can often be caught out and shot down pretty quickly. You can't pick your fights as Heavy, and you have to constantly be looking around and assessing the situation. Is it safe to push, or should I wait for my medic to respawn? Should I retreat from a fight that's starting to get a little too much? Or should I stick it out and trust that my teammates can back me up? Having a good game sense goes a long way, and is what separates the good players from the bad. Another important part of Heavy gameplay that is essential to learn is counterplay. Quickly making a decision on how to maximize your effectiveness against an enemy that suddenly popped on your screen, while also minimizing their effectiveness against you, will leave you with better outcomes from engagements. It's no secret that Heavy lacks mobility and has the largest hitbox out of all the 9 classes. So, when you're firing at the enemy, you better be 100% certain that it's worth it.
Today ain't your day, pancakes.
Scout vs Heavy can be easy or it can be hard, but it will always be annoying. Scout is the textbook definition of a glass cannon, and if he catches you by surprise, he just might win. The scattergun can do up to 105 damage at close range, provided all the pellets hit. And if he can utilize cover and movement well enough, he can easily overwhelm you and kill you. Most of the time, if you stick with your team, a scout will be less likely to attack you and will leave you alone. And if you can rev up before he can get in his effective range, then it can be a pretty easy kill. One thing that scouts love to do against a Heavy is jump over their heads. All the time. And while it is annoying, it certainly can be effective. Scouts often gravitate to shooting the most important player in the enemy team, and if there's a loud 6'5" Russian boy screaming at the top of his lungs, chances are he's gonna see you and he's gonna shoot you. Where Scouts' damage can really hurt you is killing your medic. Scouts will often sacrifice themselves to kill a medic, and even if they get punished for it, a medic will always be worth more than a scout. That's why it's important to keep your medic at full health, whether that be with a lunchbox item or letting them have health packs. Listening out for the audible scattergun sound can alert you when your medic is getting hurt, and be the difference between a mild inconvenience or a major setback for your team. If there's a scout that's seriously giving you a run for your money, you can always equip the Natasha, but in my opinion, sacrificing a quarter of my damage for a little bit of slowing isn't really worth it.
Go play your pinko chess game with the devil, commie.
Soldier vs Heavy can be a pretty uneven matchup for Heavy, depending on who attacks who first. Because it takes 3 direct rockets to kill Heavy, 4 if using the Natasha and Brass Beast, you can often out-damage the soldier in question, but if he catches you off guard, chances are you're gonna lose. Soldiers love to be aggressive and will take as much space as they can, and because they can only reload 1 rocket at a time, an out of position soldier can be a pretty easy kill. It only gets easier when they rocket jump. Because of the predictable arc, it can be quite simple for you to just gun down the flying American in the air. One of the biggest drawbacks to Heavy, however, is his damage source. Because the majority of all 9 classes have burst fire weapons, it can be pretty easy to abuse head glitches and props to kill the heavy. If you do see a soldier peeking in and out of a doorway or a window, it's best not to attack him. Where you do want to engage a soldier is right up in his face. Because soldiers' rockets do splash damage, getting close to a soldier can cause his rockets to damage himself, making it even easier to kill him. But the thing you have to look out for are crit rockets. A single crit can do 300 damage on a direct hit, and because the heavy is slow to move even while unrevved, a crit quick uber can really ruin your day. One final tip I have for heavy is to utilize rocket jumping. The soldier isn't the only class that can rocket jump. If you time a crouch and a jump at the right time when an explosive goes off, even a heavy can go flying. And because most soldiers shoot at their opponent's feet to maximize splash damage, you can use this mechanic to your advantage more often than you'd think. I wish I had more to say about Soldier other than to just shoot him, but it really is that simple. Smart soldiers will know not to rocket jump directly into you, and will stay out of your effective range, so equipping the Tomislav can help deal damage where the stock minigun would falter. Same as Scout, you can use the Natasha to annoy the enemy, but as funny as the chat messages are, I'd much rather use the Tomislav. Pyro matchups are one of the fights that Heavy can win pretty comfortably. Because of the small range of his flames and Heavy's large health pool, 1v1ing a Pyro more often than not ends with the Heavy coming out on top, and the afterburn can be easily mitigated by a banana or a sandwich. The Pyro just doesn't have the damage necessary to take on a Heavy. I'm honestly just glad that an unlockable that can burst down a Heavy within seconds doesn't exist at all. Oh, what a shame that would be. Oh no. The Dragon's Fury is one of the dumbest weapons ever to be put in Team Fortress 2. The idea that one primary weapon switch can turn the Pyro from a free kill into a terrifying nightmare is crazy to me, and the fact that it was introduced during the Jungle Inferno update, which was against Heavy and Pyro, hurts even more. Pyro can absolutely melt Heavy with this one weapon, and it isn't even close. Yeah, maybe sometimes a Pyro might miss a fireball or two and give you just enough time to gun him down, but most of the time it's hard to miss anything when fighting a Heavy. A vaccinated medic can be an effective strategy against Dragon's Fury Pyro and can give you the upper hand in most situations, but relying on your teammates to actually pick medic and the vaccinator and pocket you all at the same time won't happen too often. The contrast between a Dragon's Fury Pyro and Flamethrower Pyro is so drastic that the moment you find out which one he's using, it's more often than not too late. Maps that are enclosed with tight corridors and corners can be fatal, so make sure to jump rev after rounding each corner. Make sure to stay near a wide area or near your team to try and scare the Pyro away. One thing that Pyros love to do all the time is air blast Heavies away, especially when you get Ubered. The moment a Pyro sees the medic pop Uber charge, they instantly start air blasting, no matter what, and it can be pretty effective, especially when the Pyro in question is utilizing cover to their advantage. If your medic is fully charged and it looks like you're about to get an Uber from him, make sure that the Pyro is either dead or preoccupied doing something else. If a Pyro looks like they're getting a bit too close to you and they start air blasting away your medic, make sure you gun them down quickly, because the last thing you want to do is be out of position right up in the enemy's face without a pocket.
Oh, there's a new gravy-filled angel in heaven.
Most of the time, getting the jump on a poor unsuspecting Demoman can be a pretty easy kill for a Heavy. You will see quite a lot of them, especially on the front lines, and if you start firing first, you will win most of the time. There is one scenario, however, where you do not want to engage a Demoman, and that is whenever he sees you first. Notice how I said a Heavy can easily kill a Demoman that isn't looking at you? Well, when the Demoman is looking at you, you're pretty much dead. Because of the sheer power of stickies and pills, all the Demoman has to do is shoot 2 stickies at your feet, then shoot a pill and you're dead. And sometimes they don't even need to use the grenade launcher. Because stickies take time to explode, most classes can either move out of its effective range or use some form of utility to deal with the spam. But Heavy that's out in the open and is revved up, he has no chance. Sometimes it is possible to quickly look down and shoot the stickies before they explode, but even then, all the Demoman has to do is switch to his grenade launcher and hit you with 3 pills. A minigun might deal a lot of damage, but nothing sends you back to the respawn chamber faster than a crit sticky to the face. Demoman is one of the most powerful and influential classes in TF2, besides Medic of course, and it's no surprise that an experienced demo can just pub stomp an entire server by simply pressing M1 and M2. So, when engaging with a demo, make sure to use positioning to your advantage. Utilizing high ground and head glitches can force the demo to at least try a little bit harder to aim his pills and stickies, and can often be the difference between life and death. Where Heavy truly shines against the demo is right up in his face. The stock minigun is perfect for this and can be a very useful tool in gunning down that Black Scottish Cyclops. As for Demonite, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure you watch out for the K-bot.
The burning you feel? It is shame.
Heavy vs Heavy could be one of the simplest matchups to ever exist in TF2. The answer? Who shoots first? Also, who has a medic? Actually, scratch that. Who shoots first? The minigun's main drawback is its large spread. That's what makes it balanced. But thanks to Heavy's slow movement speed and massive hitbox, shooting a Heavy as a Heavy allows you to hit more shots than if you were aiming at any other class, and it's even easier when using the Tomislav. But besides unlockable weapons, there is one tip that is crucial to implement in your Heavy gameplay: crouch firing. Crouching while firing your minigun can be the difference between life and death. Displacing your hitbox just enough to where some of the enemy's Heavy's bullets miss you will more often than not lead to better results. Another tip for engaging with Heavies is to change your playstyle based on what minigun they have equipped. Generally, there are two types of miniguns that you will use and fight against as a Heavy: the Tomislav and the stock minigun. Yes, there are other miniguns, but a majority of the time these two will be used. I'm not going into which weapon is better because frankly it's a video that's been done to death, but I'm not going to deny that these two weapons are better and worse in certain situations. It deals 9 damage per bullet, 4.75 damage at maximum damage fall off, and 13.5 at maximum damage ramp up. This means that without any external support or buffs, a fully revved up Heavy can delete a max overhealed Heavy in about 1.5 seconds. While it can be used on all maps, stock Heavy thrives on closed-in maps with little open areas such as Barn Blitz and Mercenary Park, while in medium to long ranges, not so much. Tomislav is a little different. While it does have the same damage numbers as the stock minigun, it shoots 20% slower than stock. However, the upside is that Tomislav is 20% more accurate than stock. This might not seem like much if you don't play Heavy, but at medium to long range you can definitely feel it. Because of the buffed accuracy, playing Tomislav Heavy on open maps and areas with long sightlines such as Upward and Frontier can maximize the effectiveness of the Tomislav and will allow you to take advantage of the tighter bullet spread and bring it to its fullest potential. During Heavy vs Heavy, taking into account what minigun they're using and changing your playstyle based on that can lead to better engagements and gunfights. Here's what I mean. Let's say I'm playing against this Heavy on Barn Blitz. He's using the Tomislav. Now that I know he's using that weapon, I can alter my playstyle to counter his current playstyle, and sometimes you don't even need to switch to the other minigun to do it. Realizing he will be worse at close range and exploiting that led to a gunfight where he was severely disadvantaged, and I came out on top. One last tip that I have is that you can actually surf the Heavy's bullets for just a little bit of extra speed. So, if you're in a position where you have to escape while the Heavy's firing at you, jump crouching away can be the difference between living and getting sent back to the respawn chamber.
And another thing, you're ugly.
The Engineer isn't really a class you see very often when playing as Heavy, unless there's one on your team. Because of his inherently supportive role, seeing an Engineer frontline is a rare occurrence, and encountering a Wandering Engineer, more often than not, is an easy kill. If they do get the jump on you, it is possible to lose a fight with an Engineer, especially when they're using the panic attack, but unless you're already distracted by someone or something else, then you can win most of the time. While the Engineer himself might not exactly have a lot of firepower, his sentry gun can be a devastating punishment for whoever decides to walk into its range. Its massive damage and ability to deny pushes make it a very powerful area denial tool. While a mini sentry in a level 1 might not be too much of a threat, a level 3 can be deadly. There is a downside when fighting sentries. While it isn't listed on any of the stats of the miniguns, all of Heavy's primaries actually do reduce damage to sentries. The minigun deals 15% less damage to level 2 and 20% less damage to a level 3. While this might not seem like a lot, trying to snipe a level 3 sentry outside its max range can feel like you're shooting nothing, even when using the Tomislav. Most of the time, it's better to just avoid the sentry altogether. It can be dealt with much easier by a Demoman or a direct hit soldier. If you do end up in the situation where you're Ubered and in front of an Engineer nest, there's a very good chance that he's using the Wrangler. It's important to remember to shoot the Engineer first. Not only is it good for your team as you're killing an important enemy, but it won't give them the chance to move into a good spot to recall their building with the Rescue Ranger, or just get into a position where they're safe from you. Another important note is to remember that if you kill the Wrangling Engineer and you have Uber to spare, it can actually be beneficial to shoot the other buildings and enemies instead, and then return back to shooting the sentry when the shield goes down, or if you're running out of time. A sentry that has just been unwrangled will be disabled for 3 seconds, so you may as well use that time to create even more space with the Uber push, and most of the time, if your team pushes with you, you won't even have to destroy the sentry, and can return to just blasting people away.
Come over here. I promise I will heal you.
Medic is Heavy's easiest matchup by far, but that generally goes for most of the classes. Catching a medic out of position is probably the easiest kill you can get, and you'd be surprised how many new medics will just blindly follow their pocket like they have a leash attached to them. It's pretty hard for a medic to 1v1 you even if they do pull off a crit. However, it's important to remember that it's not really the medics themselves you have to worry about, it's their team. A medic is the strongest class in the game, hands down. It's the only class in TF2 where if you don't have one on your team, you are at a severe disadvantage. Ubercharge is the most powerful thing in TF2 and can literally win games. Even if the Ubercharge in question doesn't get a lot of kills, the disruption and space it creates can't be outmatched by any other class. When facing an Uber push, sometimes you're just gonna die. Heavy is a loud, threatening class with a big hitbox that attracts a lot of attention, and when the enemy Ubers, they have a good chance of shooting you first, especially if you have your own pocket. It's important to always hear out for the classic voice lines and be wary if an Uber push hasn't happened in a while. Another tip is if it's safe to do so, you can actually shoot the medic while he's Ubered to slow down his movement. It's not a significant amount of knockback, but it can be enough to keep him in your team's area to punish if the Uber runs out at a bad time. But the most important tip is to remember to shoot the medics first. When playing as Heavy, especially during Uber pushes, you might just turn a corner and there'll be 3 or 4 players that are just sitting there waiting to die. Instead of blindly shooting in all directions, instead focus down one enemy. You'll get much more value out of 1 kill than just scaring them all off and getting no kills. You have to make a decision based on who's a higher value target. If there's a medic close enough to you, shoot him first. Even if you die, dropping a medic will always be better than living and getting no kills. Of course, this isn't always the case. Sometimes, if a medic is too far away for you to kill him easily, changing targets to a closer enemy will result in a better outcome. There is one final tip that, while hard to pull off, can be effective. You can actually stuff Ubers with the Holiday Punch. Punching someone on the back with this thing, or getting a random crit, will force the receiver to laugh, even while Uber charged. It can be pretty hard to pull off, but if you think an Uber push is going to happen soon, sitting in a corner and waiting for a backstab can be one of the funniest and most effective ways to completely deny a medic of the very thing that makes him so powerful. Of course, Air Blast is always more reliable than a pair of mittens, but is it as fun? No.
I just bagged the world's fattest man!
Let's just get this out of the way. Sniper is the counter to Heavy. There's nothing you can do against an experienced sniper that can just really hit his shots, or even an unexperienced sniper really. Heavy lacks any form of long range, besides maybe tap firing with his primary, and engaging a sniper at any range will leave you with a bullet-sized hole in your brain. If you're frontlining as a Heavy, then the best advice I have for you is to just not peek. It sounds boring as hell and unfun to do, but that's really the only form of strong counterplay that the Heavy has against him. If you notice a sniper in your peripheral vision while fighting other classes, you can crouch to hopefully mess up his aim, but this doesn't always work. If there's a sniper that's absolutely ruining your day, using the Fists of Steel can be an effective way to cross sniper sightlines safely. Combining weird movement along with crouch jumping can also be pretty effective, and turning to the right while calling for medic can actually save you from being headshot. When Heavy calls out for medic, he brings his hand in front of his face, and can actually block headshots. So, if you don't have any real cover around, turning to the right and calling for a medic could be the difference between life and death. Frankly, there isn't a whole lot a Heavy can do against a sniper. If there's alternate routes on the map, you can go for sort of a flank heavy playstyle, but it might not always work out. Sometimes, the best way to deal with a sniper is to just not engage him, and pray that your own snipers can deal with him.
You disgust me, fat man!
A lot of people consider Spire hard counter to Heavy, and while I do agree to some extent, unlike the sniper you can actually do a lot of things to protect yourself against spies. Of course, there's always the classic tip of just turning around every so often, spy checking suspicious players, and shooting randomly when you have an infinite ammo source like a dispenser or a payload cart, and it is effective. Listening out for the classic backstab scream can also aid in turning around fast enough, and checking the kill feed every once in a while to see if any teammates got backstabbed is an effective way to get a gauge on where the enemy spy is. Of course, this doesn't work with the Your Eternal Reward, which hides the noise of backstab kills, but I find that most spies use the kunai anyway. When turning around, it's important to change up how often you look behind. If you look every 3 or so seconds, a spy's going to figure out your timing and backstab you pretty easily. If you change up how often you turn around, you can really mess with the spy's head. Sometimes doing a double take can actually be an effective way to mess up a spy's timing and catch him in the act. But the most important tip against a spy is to always look up. Thanks to his cloak, spies can camp on a high roof or some sort of staircase, waiting for a chance to drop down and backstab. Heavy is even easier to do this against, thanks to his slow movement speed. So if there's a ledge or a platform above you, treat it as the enemy's spawn, because there's a good chance that a spy will drop down onto your head and you will be very, very dead. Well, that's it. That's every class in TF2 and how to counter them as heavy. I hope you learned something from this video and put into practice some of the tactics that were shown. In all honesty, you can only improve so much with aiming that the best way to get better as a heavy player is to just get good. It might sound pretty stupid, but getting to know the maps and growing as a player will result in more kills and less deaths. It's that simple. Because Heavy's gameplay is so linear and boring, coming up with creative strategies and developing game sense can be the difference between losing or topping the scoreboard. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.